Hey folks, Matthew Weiss here, WeissAdvice.com and Weiss Advice here on YouTube. Last week I did a video where one of my pieces of advice was to be boring in your balances and to be fearless in your effects, and this is a great example of using really heavy-handed compression to create a really cool effect, not just on the drums but on the entire record, and I'm going to walk you through it. So first let me play the record without those effects on, and then explain where they're all coming from. So this record is a pop R&B record, but it's obviously drawing on from a lot of like late 70s, 80s kind of vibes, right? It's got that Juno synth, we've got those heavy bombastic drums, so the idea of pulling from some of that kind of like Phil Collins-y stuff is in the music itself. Well, when I think of Phil Collins, I tend to think of In the Air Tonight, where we have those like really heavily compressed drums. And of course, what's happening in that record is that the drums are going through the compressor that is in the talkback microphone in line with the talkback microphone of the SSL console, which creates a really heavy pumpy compression. Now, I don't have one of those compressors, but I do have a couple of plugins that can emulate one. So I want to pull up the first one here. It's going to be the Cornif Audio Shure Level Lock, and I want to point out this is not a sponsored video, but I do love these guys, and sometimes they give me free stuff, and this just came out, and it's really cool. So no money to do this, but I do have the relationship. But I pulled up the Shure Level Lock. My other option was Soundtoys Devil Lock, which I love, but they are very different plugins. They do completely different things, even though they're based on the same concept. This Shure Level Lock here is probably the closest compressor to that talkback mic compressor that you can get without actually having that talkback mic compressor. Ooh, that's hard to say. So let me give you the before and after on this. Right, so as soon as I put that compression on there, all of the ambient stuff starts becoming really obvious. I'm going to solo up the actual elements. Here we go. And now I'm going to play it before and after real quick. So really heavy-handed compression, sounds really cool. What I really like about this, it's actually a very small feature that there's not a lot of attention called to in any of like the marketing or anything for this particular device, but there's actually 3 different modelings here. And what I notice is that when I go through the 3 different models, the action changes a little bit. So the feel of the compression changes, which changes the rhythmic impact. So I set my settings on the setting 1 here. This is the first one that was modeled, and it sounds like this. Model 2 sounds like this. And you can hear that those side drums, those like really heavy reverby toms sit a little different. That shaker sits a little bit brighter, and that the push and pull feels a little bit more like expand and contract feeling. Like it's almost like something about the curve of it feels a little slower and beefier. I don't know exactly how to describe it. And then the third one sounds like this. And here I hear like those mid-range drums a little bit more. I hear like the inside do-do-do-do-do's kind of happening a little more. I don't know how else to describe it. So all 3 of those can work in any given instance, but the way that I've been using this is I set it on the first mode, and then I just go through the 3 and just feel out like which rhythm feels more compelling to me for the part. And I ended up here on this middle one right here to get the vibe that I was going for. And then a little bit of EQ afterwards. I felt like the shaker ended up a little bit bright, just everything ended up a little bit too shiny. So I'm taking off a very, very slight amount of 10K with what is now also not a sponsorship here, but a company I have a great relationship with, which is the Mixwave Pultec, and it sounds phenomenal. So that's my processing on those orchestral drums. Now, that is some pretty heavy-handed compression. In addition to that, when I got the session, God Particle was already on the submix bus, so I kept it there. So I'm mixing into this. This is a great deal of compression as well. I'll give you the before and after without that. So again, a very, very heavy layer of compression. We are not done. Yes, this seems excessive, but just follow me on this journey here, okay? I'm going to offset it with something in a moment. So I'm being totally crazy with the compression. I've got a little bit of top-end boost and a little bit of mid-range cut here because all the gunk is starting to fly up and some of the tone is starting to dull out. Now we've got one more compressor. This is the Universal Audio API bus compressor. Again, not sponsoring this video, but again, a relationship that I have with that company, which is very good. So here I have things set a little bit weirdly. Normally when we think of bus compression, the typical way that it's done is slow attack, fast to medium release, depending on how we want it. I'm doing the opposite. I'm doing very fast attack, very slow release, and my ratio is at infinite to 1, technically, although I doubt it's literally infinite. So it's very, very heavy-handed, but I'm using the 50% on the mix knob. So I'll turn it up to 100%. We can hear the before and after, and then I'll bring it back down to 50%. I like that overly glued sound. I like the fact that everything feels like it's being pulled on all at the same time. I think it's a cool vibe. My only issue is that it's so heavily compressed now at this point that it's losing all of its dimensionality, which is why I chose to back it off to about 50%, which ended up being a sweet spot where I got a little bit more of that glue and connectivity, but I retained a little bit more of the dimension. So here's the before and after on that. It's sort of things like that little tick-tick that kind of comes in as like a little fill between the bars. The way that feels, the way that carries me into the next beat, those are the kinds of things I'm listening for that connectivity. And the reason why I want to point all this out is because on paper, this is way too much compression, like obscene amounts of compression. Who cares? If it feels good, it is good. And we have to be able to accept that. At the same time, I've gone totally over the top with all of my compression effects here, both on drums, on Mixbus, on all this kind of stuff. But I also want to point out that if we get into the instrumental and we look at what I'm actually doing on every individual instrument, we can see that I've got a shaker loop with literally no effects. I've got a bass here that has one bit of processing, and it's not even that much. It's like just this low mid being compressed. The bass itself has no processing at all. There's the Junos, which are getting a big top end boost. It's a big top end boost, right? I'm being fearless with my effect, but it's because I wanted to bring out that texture. But it's one EQ just to do something very specific. The kick drum, I'm boosting 30 hertz, right? But there's no additional compression, right? So it's like one plugin to no plugins on everything, right? So it's a combination of both. I'm being very boring with my balances, doing only what I feel is necessary. But when it comes time for the creativity, I'm willing to go all the distance. So I wanted to show you this compression approach because I hope it opens your mind to the idea that we are not mixing for audio engineers. We are not mixing so that the comment section on Gearspace or YouTube says, you know, oh, that's perfect. That sounds great. Wow, what beautiful fidelity. And listeners do not care. They want to feel emotional impact. And if you want to give them emotional impact, you have to be willing to piss the very precious audio engineer community off by doing this kind of crazy stuff. So I hope you dig this video. I hope that you hit that like button. I hope that you click that subscribe. I hope you share this with anybody that you feel might benefit from it. And lastly, you know what we say here at Weiss Advice. We are musicians, sound is our instrument, and I will catch you next time.